local restaurant industry recently got a burst of national attention when the Food Network show Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives came to town. But as anyone in the local restaurant scene will tell you, there's been a lot happening here for many years. Today we have a great panel with us to talk about the local restaurant industry, including what concepts work here, changing dining habits, and finding the right location for restaurants. If you have a question for the panel today, please text it in to the number that's in your program. It's 910-264-8955. Make sure you include your name and table number with the text, and we'll get a microphone to as many people as possible so you can ask your question directly to the panelists. I'd like to now introduce you to the panel. To my immediate left is Haley Jensen, the co-owner and beer sommelier at Beer Barrio and the soon-to-be-opened Skytown Beer Company. And most importantly to me, she's a graduate of the Wilma Leadership Institute. Next to her is Amber Mouchakis, the president of LM Restaurants, a large restaurant group based in Raleigh that locally includes Blue Water, Hops, Carolina Ale House, Oceanic, and Henry's. Next is Keith Rhodes, the owner and chef at Catch, the Catch Food Truck, and the Fun Seafood Bar Pop-Up. Next is James Smith, the owner of Fork and Cork, Smoke on the Water, and Bone and Bean. And on the end is Ray Worrell, the owner of Slice of Life, which currently has locations downtown, on Military Cutoff, and in Pine Valley. And they just broke ground on one in Porter's Neck. Let's please have a round of applause for our panel. I'd like to start off by having each panelist just take a minute and quickly describe their restaurant concepts. So, Haley, we'll start with you.
Hi, my name is Haley Jensen. I own Beer Barrio, which is a beer-infused modern Mexican restaurant in downtown Wilmington. I own that restaurant with my husband, who is our chef, and my parents are also involved. We kind of have the opposite story. It wasn't my parents who brought me into their restaurant where I grew up, or that'll be my son. But we actually decided to open our own restaurant and brought my parents in along with us. So it's become a great second act for the both of them. And then the four of us worked so well together that we decided to expand. And we'll be opening a barbecue and brewery concept by the end of this month on New Center. That'll be Skytown Beer Company that he mentioned. But finding this community, we are industry vets, mostly cutting our teeth in New York City. And finding Wilmington to be the home for our concepts was just, it was a long process, but it led us here. And we're just so grateful to have all of you as customers and regulars and have such support for great restaurants in this community.
So Amber, I won't have you describe every restaurant concept under LM, but if you could talk a little bit about the structure of LM.
Got it. Good morning. So LM Restaurants is a family-run company. Mom and Dad founded it 40 years ago, actually, with a small 48-seat restaurant. So I represent the second generation. I represent your son. We have over 5 concepts. We're in 6 different states with over 2,000 employees, and that represents more people than the population in my father's small village in Grace. So it's kind of an interesting factoid. And so we are a restaurant management company, and we incubate different concepts. So
great.
That's a little bit of what we do.
Keith?
Well, I'm Keith Rhodes. I'm a Wilmington native. I've been contributing to the Wilmington dining scene for about 15, 20 years or so. Catch Restaurant on Market Street, just a progressive seafood restaurant. We try to source locally as much as possible using local farmers and local fishermen. Catch the Food Truck, a little bit more accessible. You can find us at Flytrap Brewery. My wife and I own this business, and we also run Fun Seafood Pop-Up. And so Wilmington is a great audience. They've been really, really great supporters of us. And I'm glad to be here today. It's wonderful to see all our supporters and customers out here this morning. Yeah.
James?
My name's James Smith. Lived here for about 13 years, originally from Texas. Lived in D.C., Jersey, New Orleans, a couple of different places. Worked restaurants pretty much all my life. When I was here, I was bartending at Ruth's Chris for a very long time and decided to start a food truck called the Paddy Wagon, which worked out really well. Did that for about 2.5 years, and then Ray decided to move, and so I moved into his old location at 122 Market for Fork and Cork, which is I call it high-end bar food. It's like all the stuff you ate in college, but now just with a lot better ingredients. We do wings, cheese dip, jalapeno poppers, but we make everything from scratch, which I think is really important. After that, I was approached about opening up Smoke on the Water. It was going to be a fork and cork, but we decided to change the concept to something a little bit more water-friendly out there at the River Lights area. Great location. I didn't know the Cape Fear River could be that pretty. I see the downtown version of it all the time, but it's gorgeous out there. And then most recently, I took over a place called Bone and Bean, which is a small little barbecue place. Being from Texas, don't boo me, but North Carolina barbecue is not always my favorite. So I brought brisket into Fork and Cork, and it's gone over pretty well. So Bone and Bean is a Texas-style barbecue place. Little pretty mellow, real casual, but a great spot to grab by teeth. And next year, we are opening up Fork and Cork at Carolina Beach.
Ray?
Well, thank you everybody for coming out and this morning. I feel honored to be here. I moved here from Jersey in 1989 to go to school. I really moved here because I love the area of Wilmington. And while I was at school, I put myself through school working at Elijah's. Ended up working at Elijah's for 7 years, then worked at various other restaurants afterwards. Then went to go work for Ian Mosley at the Slice of Life. I worked there for 2 years and kept nagging Ian to sell it to me. And one night he did. And I took the concept basically and took the ball and ran with it. Opened up Military Cutoff after 3 years in business. Then 3 years in business, I did the 17th Street store. 3 years later, I moved across and let James in my old spot. And now it's 3 years now, and we just broke ground last week up in Porter's Neck. So we're really excited about that, moving up into that area for sure. So, we just love Wilmington, love being here. That's it.
Great. Well, let's start off talking about how you create and evolve restaurant concepts. And I think we have very different approaches on stage. When I was talking to Ray beforehand, his philosophy is keep it simple, stupid, and you've got same restaurant, same name in different places. James, not to pick on you, but he probably took a different approach. You got three probably fairly different concepts in 3 different places, and of course Amber having so many different concepts under one roof. So whoever wants to kick it off, why don't you talk about how when you create a new concept and then how something has to evolve, especially if it's once it's been around for a while.
I guess I'll go. For me, Fork and Cork was an evolution of the Paddy Wagon. To me, I wanted to do something that everybody loved, and most people love a burger, and you can elevate it or dumb it down however much you want. So it was something I thought was easily approachable. So that concept just sort of happened and was the original idea. To me, Smoke on the Water just kind of came about with necessity for the specific location and kind of what worked there. And then Bone and Bean is just barbecues in my heart. So they ended up having to leave town, the owners, and they needed some assistance. So it was just something I knew we could do and kind of carry on. I think moving forward, I will probably stick with the Fork and Cork concept just because multiple concepts are hard. Different menu items, different demographics, things like that. It's kind of hard just to keep track of all of them and make sure it works. So I think I'll stick with one.
I'll say for us, my husband and I did a kind of a research road trip from the Norfolk, Virginia Beach area through Wilmington, Myrtle Beach, down to Charleston, just kind of really trying to find that home. And when we were in Wilmington, we had narrowed it to about 3 concepts that we were considering, the Mexican concept that we went with being the front runner. And as we were enjoying an evening downtown, I said, why don't we just go out for some guac, margaritas, and really talk about it and really see if we can picture ourselves here. And there wasn't a place downtown to get guac and margaritas. And I said, well, the decision is pretty much made because we want to eat that food, and I'm sure other people on vacation want to have guacamole and margaritas too. So that's what decided it for us. It was a little, it was a little hard for us because the space we wanted was a Mexican restaurant that failed. And we thought, is that bad luck? But actually, it turned out to be our perfect home. So it's been a wonderful fit for us. And then moving forward, brewing our own beer was something we've always wanted to do. We've also been avid home brewers, and myself as a beer sommelier, I'm a beer lover. For the last 10 years, that's been a dream of ours. So that really became our next step. And the barbecue, my husband has a passion for, but he wanted to take his time with it. As a New Yorker moving to North Carolina, he didn't want to come down right away and say, oh yeah, I can teach you guys a thing or two about barbecue. He's like, got to come in, respectful and nice and see what the market likes.
Very touchy subject.
Yeah.
Don't offend the Texans down there.
No,
It's
no.
okay.
But,
I treaded lightly on that one too.
yeah, well, it's a thing for sure, but we feel like we do, just through our pulled pork taco and through winning an award for our barbecue sauce, we're getting it. So we felt ready to evolve into that next direction. But I think, too, will be it for us because each one is a job, and I think also having an 18-month-old 2 jobs is where I'd like to stop.
So for our family, it really kind of starts off with the dream. What is that vision? And then, we look at the community. And each community has a different personality. And what can that dream bring to that community and that location? We take a very unique look at the specific building, the land, the community, and go, okay, how can this dream of bringing this concept possibly work in this location? And that's kind of starts with the dream.
So for us, we are exploring franchising within the next year. So we're trying to make our systems in place so that they are consistent throughout each restaurant so that we can take that concept and put it in different markets. And I really just want to start in North Carolina so I don't have to travel as much. But, so for us, it's all about keeping the consistency, but we're always looking for that better product that, I always tell my people that when we're looking for new products that we want to find better products. I don't care about the price, but I don't want something outrageously expensive, but I want to sacrifice quality, and then, for price, so, but for us, with the franchising coming on board, we're working on all of our systems within our restaurant to make sure that we have a good game plan so that when we get rolling with the franchising, it'll work.
So all of you have been in the restaurant business a long time. In your time, what are the biggest changes you've seen in dining habits? So basically, that's kind of a veiled way of asking, you can just complain about us, your customers, and what really annoys you. But no, really, what changes have you seen?
Well, for us, we added vegan cheese. We have a gluten-free crust, and my wife and daughter are both vegan, so I kind of when we go out to eat, it's a challenge sometimes, but it's not as much of a challenge as it used to be. I mean, I remember when I worked at Elijah's 20 years ago, and somebody would walk in and say they're even vegetarian. Vegan, they wouldn't even know what that is. Vegetarian, they still looked at them like they had 4 eyes and 3 feet, But that isn't the case anymore, People in restaurants are a lot more accommodating, and, you have to be, And we found that adding the gluten-free crust and the vegan cheese, we brought in a whole nother market of people, And we brought, you might just have one person that's vegan out of your group of 5, and they're going to come back to that restaurant because they know that there's an option there for that person.
That was actually one of the first pieces of advice that Ray gave me. He had just done the gluten-free crust, and he was like, man, if you can find a gluten-free bun, he was like, people will love it. And I tried cheese. I've tried more gluten-free buns in a week and a half than I ever cared to. It's not necessary for me. And
Yeah, it took us a year to find a gluten-free crust that I felt good about serving that didn't taste like cardboard. So
Yeah,
the
styrofoam,
products
cardboard.
are getting better, because there's more of a need.
I actually invited a couple of gluten-free people I knew to come
Right.
by and be like, will you please try this? Because you know what the options are out there. To me, I don't care for any of them, but, it's just something that, is this something you would actually come and purchase, and would you be happy with it? Dietary restrictions are difficult. They're difficult for the restaurant. They're difficult for the person that requires them. I feel bad for some people that are allergic to everything. Going out to eat is just tough. Now, we do hear the word allergy a lot. I always ask people, are you going to explode or not? Well, because it changes how you work in the kitchen.
Right.
I mean, Keith understands, doing everything from scratch. If you have a shellfish allergy and you're eating a catch, he has to change everything in the kitchen, new tongs, new cutting board, new everything, so that we don't actually make this person ill. Now, if you just don't like shrimp, we can cook that, on the side, or we can change it, and it's just different. So I guess what I ask people is just be honest. You can't be allergic to everything. So it can be entertaining.
One of the big changes I have seen is when I got into the restaurant industry, I was 15, and I was a drive-through girl at Arby's. That was my first job. But then moving up into actual dining service, when I was old enough to become a waitress, it was chain restaurants. That's what everybody was like, do you want Ruby Tuesdays, Olive Garden? That was what people were eating. And I think the whole foodie movement and the Food Network becoming something that everyone was watching all day and all night, and seeing chefs as rock stars and thinking, maybe I should grow fresh herbs in my windowsill. That's in my lifetime that I've seen that. I mean, my parents, they cooked good food for us for sure, but the idea of, everyday people, and all of the food delivery services, people want their food to look Instagram worthy. People want their food to taste as good as when they go out. So we as restaurateurs have to think like, do my plates look good enough for Instagram and social media? Do people come here and think, I could not make this? We have to respond to that because our diners are more sophisticated. I mean, I served chicken Alfredo day in and day out for 3 years when I was, a young server. And the idea of that dish being so popular now, it's maybe here and there people go to those restaurants, but people really have kind of expanded their palates and what they want to eat and what they're impressed by and what they want to post on their social media. They're expecting a little more sophistication. So I think we've had to respond to that.
Most definitely. We've recognized that in our restaurant as well. And you touched on where I think I've seen the industry change, or the way that the diner interacts with us as restaurateurs is gone more digital. So Instagram, Facebook, TripAdvisor, Yelp, Twitter, I mean, you could just keep going. The digital storefront and the platform and the way in which diners are, our guests are talking with us is now on here and not necessarily always face-to-face. And so we need to be responsive to them and engage in conversation. So what normally would have happened at the door with a maitre d' or with a manager, we find that our guests tend to walk out the door and then they start, having the conversation with you because they think that's the easiest way to get a hold of you. So we've had to change, how we work and operate in order to respond.
And I think that's hard because at Fork and Cork, every now and then I'll get my Facebook. I'm the only person that does most of the Facebook stuff. But at 11:45, somebody will send a message that says, hey, what's the mac and cheese today? I'm coming for lunch. And, if I'm in the middle of something,
You're not on
I
your
might
computer.
not see that until about 2 o'clock. So, we don't have like an auto reply. And I always think about that. I'm like, just call. You can call. It's okay. It's old school. I understand. But still,
Yeah.
it'll be all right.
I think that in the Wilmington area, we are looking at about 1,000 different food offerings, believe it or not, here. And I think that most people eat out a lot more than they did, especially when I was coming up. Home prepared meals, that was something that we had. The idea of having dinner somewhere else when I was younger, No, we ate dinner together. And so a lot of folks eat out now. And so I think that when you approach restaurants now, there's a level of expectation when it comes to restaurants. And I think that, especially when you're thinking of a tier restaurant like mine, it's very important that we try to make that impression. It's very important that you connect with us and know what we're doing. There's truth in advertising and things like that. There are a lot of folks that are here in town that are really putting their best foot forward when it comes to sourcing locally, preparing food that's super creative. But I also think that there are just a lot of folks that are out eating, and there's just a lot of mediocrity that's out there right now. And we have a lot of chain restaurants that are here in town right now. And one of the things that I've noticed just being a Wilmington native is that there's not a lot of native Wilmingtonians left here in Wilmington. And it's very important that we get out and support the local fabric that everybody enjoys, unless we'll be looking at a mirror of other restaurants in Myrtle Beach, in Raleigh, in Charlotte, just lots of different chain restaurants. So when you have local places like Pinpoint, like Savore's, like the Oceanic, and Ray with the Slice, and all of these different places, get out and support these places. Where we're trying to bring them to you in other venues as well, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. 1,000 different food offerings, from food trucks to hot dogs to high-end dining. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's a lot of work as well. So just kind of think about that with your choices, because I've seen it grow here. I've seen it grow here. I grew up here, and it's just crazy when I turn around and I look. 1,000 different offerings of food here in Wilmington. That is a lot. And there's a lot of choices as well, a lot of competition as well.
Yes. The landscape is changing, and I anticipate there'll be a consolidation over the next couple of years, because 1,000 restaurants can't maintain, and if you look at it on a bigger scale, there's just so many more restaurants than consumers to support. And so the people who are taking care of their guests, being responsible, responding to the changing guest needs, those are the people who are going to bubble to the surface in this next kind of evolution of the restaurant industry.
Do you, Amber, since you're in a lot of different markets, is that similar in all the markets you're in, or is Wilmington a little different in terms of the number of restaurants and things that are here?
I find that the competition is more fierce down here in Wilmington than in some of our other markets, but it is something that we see everywhere. And again, the focus needs to be is, how do you become ingrained in the community, and what can you do as a restaurateur to become a part of the community and help? We have a saying, Dad was a farmer, so you can't just continuously take from a community. You have to, constantly replenish and give back. And so we're always, challenging ourselves. All right, what are we doing to give back to that community, back to that local area?
Again, if you have a question, please text it in to the number that's in your program. First audience question will be table 22. Tucker?
Morning. Oh, sorry about that.
Over there.
Morning. Tucker Stevens with Stevens Financial here in Wilmington. I'm a financial advisor. Obviously, there's a big, heavy connection to financial services and food today. I don't know where that came from. But again, just wanted to look up to the panel and thank you all for coming. I know, and a special shout out to the fact that you all woke up this early and came away from your restaurants to come out here. As a former restaurant owner here in Wilmington, I used to buy you a gumbo back in 1995 to 2000, so don't know if anybody remembers that. If you do, I just made you hungry for etouffee today. But again, I know as a former restaurant owner here and all that we went through, we had a good success a short period of time, but things did change a lot. One of the great things that we had available to us were great employees. So the neat part about that is that we were lucky. Not only we were a small operation, but we got to pick really good people. And then obviously we opened up another restaurant, and we were still able to continue to handpick people. But how has that pool of employees changed over time for you folks? Obviously there's always that conversation about the millennials and things like that. They always get a bad rap. But really what we saw during our time was just great people that we had. They bought into our concept, And that's the second part of the question too, is how do you get your employees to actually buy into your vision, your concept to be better employees? And then one further thing for Amber, special thank you because you just hired my son Matt as a bus runner at Oceanic. So thank you for helping our personal economy back at home. So.
You're welcome. He will get some really good life skills. I think one of the things people forget is, no matter what your goals for the future are, the restaurant industry, we teach a lot of great life skills, teamwork, how to handle like guest relations, how to take care of others. And no matter whether you're going to become a lawyer, a doctor, a school teacher, those are great skills that are incredibly transferable. So we talk quite often, daily, multiple times a day. Actually, 11 o'clock at night, we're talking about the staffing crisis that we have, and what I find as I'm talking with different vendors and different colleagues is that we're not seeing it just in our space. It is a staffing crisis in all industries. So I was talking with bankers, and our bankers are struggling to find front end clerks, and I'm like, oh my goodness, if you can't find somebody to work a 9 to 5, it's really hard for us to find people who are wanting to work really crazy hours. So we're looking at how do you create an engaged workforce? How do you connect with them? How do you make them feel part of a team? And there are things to do to help develop them. Personally, give them the respect and care so that they can grow to become their best self. And then figure out how do you help them feel successful working in that part or the larger group. So really focused on development, team engagement, and it starts with like finding those people. And with a 3.8% unemployment rate, that is really tough right now. So.
It can be tough because I think a lot of restaurant employees don't consider it a real job.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in restaurants, and I never thought when I was an 18-year-old waiter that it was going to be my forever job. It worked out well. I can't complain. But when I was bartending at Ruth's Chris, we'd have certain employees that they'd be like, "When I graduate from school, I'm going to get my real job." And it was my opinion that you should think of it as a real job. It pays you real money. I bought a house and bought a car when I was a bartender. So when you get the angry server that's like, this place isn't my real job, I can't wait for my real job, I go, well, I'm going to go get my real car and go to my real house. And, hope you have a good time when you graduate with your degree, and then you look for your real job. So I just think if you look at every aspect of your life, even if it is a temporary job, if you treat it with respect as well, it will reward you, because you can do really well in the service industry if you do it right.
I always give really similar advice to that too. I do have a lot of college age servers, bartenders, and a lot of them do graduate, and then they'll say, well, I'm not sure because I graduate, and then I'm going to get that real job, and I'm going to, I'm not sure if I'll be around for summer. And then they say, well, maybe I'll work summer in the busy season, and then in fall I'm going to get that real job. And the advice I always give is, don't look for a serious job. Get serious about the job that you have, because so often, all of you have, if not been to Beer Barrio, you've been to at least one of our restaurants, and you're business people who are well connected in this community. And what if you had an outstanding server and he told you about his personal life, and you say, you know what, if you're interested, here's my card. It's all networking. You guys appreciate that from your various industries, that if there is an outstanding employee in any field, you'd rather have that right attitude and work ethic than necessarily, on-the-job training or that actual industry experience. You'd rather have that candidate who's passionate and just showing a good, good skills in the job that he's doing at that moment. So I always try to highlight that this is a networking opportunity for you no matter what your real job will be. And maybe it will be to just work at my restaurant or to open your own one day. Who knows?
So that's something that we struggle with as an industry, is our image. So often, if you don't study, you'll be flipping burgers the rest of your life.
That's a good job.
but it's a great job. A lot of people, begin their careers and can, grow from quote unquote flipping burgers. So how do we work to elevate the image of our industry, that it is a real job, it plays a very impactful role in our communities.
Let's talk a little bit about real estate locally and how, in terms of what's the process in finding a location, and also how has that process changed as our community is growing? Look at the developer.
Me.
Look at the
Okay.
developer down there. By the way, when I went to Ray's office,
It's
he
usually
had
not
this
the pizza
massive
guy.
roll of architectural documents on his
Okay.
table. So.
Yeah, so, you know, in the beginning for me, it was always to lease, you know. Now it's more, since the Slice of Life's been in business for 18 years, I feel like, you know, it's time for me to own the real estate. And, you know, because I need an end game plan. I'm, you know, unfortunately not going to be on this earth forever. So, so for me, my end game plan is to, you know, sell the businesses and own the real estate. I mean, you know, I look at what McDonald's says is that we're not in the restaurant business, we're in the real estate business. So that's been my thing now, is to go out and purchase places and eventually be able to sell them and become the landlord, I guess. I have other real estate ventures outside of you know, I've rentals and that kind of thing. So I've kind of diversified what I do, not just the restaurant. So, and it's worked well. I mean, Wilmington that's kind of like getting back to the reason why I moved here. It wasn't just to go to school. I fell in love with the area. I saw the area as an area that is going to grow, and it has since '89. I mean, we've enjoyed, and I see now even more in the future. And the thing that's crazy too is I go to my friends that are in the restaurant business up in New Jersey, and I talk to them, and they're like, "You have 3 restaurants, soon to be 4 restaurants in Wilmington in one area. How can that be?" You know, because all of them have just one in, you know, Asbury Park area of New Jersey, you know, and they're like, "How can?" And I'm like, "Well, there's different demographics in all areas of Wilmington." I always said when I moved here that there was almost like a wall on College Road between Wrightsville Beach. I lived at Wrightsville Beach and worked downtown. And I would hang out with my friends at Wrightsville Beach, and they said they never come downtown. And all my downtown people never went to Wrightsville Beach bars. Yeah, I know, it's like 7 miles. But it's a whole different thing. So.
But you get I mean, on a just different topic, when I first moved here, I lived in D.C. We didn't have the Nationals at the time, so you would drive to Baltimore for a baseball game. Like, it was nothing. And when I first moved here, that same thing happened to me. I would work downtown, and people that I knew lived at Wrightsville, I'd be like, "Come down and see me." They're like, "Oh, no, that's
Too far.
I'm like, "You could walk it if you really wanted to."
Yeah.
I'm like, "This is not," but having lived here 13 years, now I'm like, it's all the way downtown. You know, like, I mean, it just happens. I mean, you
Yeah.
become a product of your environment. But I joked about it when I first moved here.
You guys both bring up a good point that, you know, as you're looking for real estate, it's incredibly important to understand the nuances of a community, because there are invisible barriers. And so especially as you're expanding into new markets that you know, don't necessarily live and work and play in, and understand those sociological norms. Because some things will look fantastic on paper, and you have to go and talk to people and spend time in the area, speak to the locals so that they can share with you. Yeah, College Road is like a natural barrier. I know over in Durham and Chapel Hill, Mount Moriah Road is like a natural barrier between, you know, Chapel Hill and Durham. So it's not always about the facts and the figures. And I had a professor one time, and he goes, "Amber, sometimes it's just about your gut too. You use the data to help make an educated decision, but you also have to listen to the gut." There's an art to location picking.
So Haley, you just went through this with your second location. Tell us a little bit about that process. And
Do I have to relive it?
sorry to bring up bad memories.
It was
start
about a
twitching.
year search for us, because we were looking. It would have been easier, I will say, to just do another beer barrio or even just another restaurant, but we really wanted to brew, and the plumbing that is required for a brewery is so extensive and so expensive that I was some of the locations that we liked, we did initially want to be right downtown so that we could walk between the two just for, ease of management. But some of the buildings down here are, just like where we are is over a 100-year-old building. I was nervous to jackhammer out those floors and to put thousands of pounds of beer equipment with thousands of pounds of liquid inside of it. I just could see it falling through the floor, at some of the places we looked, and they'd be like, well, I really think if you reinforce, and we got to get architects would come out and give me these worst case scenarios that I'm like, I can't take that risk, no way. So it pushed us to newer developments, and it pushed us over to New Center, New Center right by Target, where we decided on, because that was a building that was an open slab foundation, so it was just dirt. So I could just dig in dirt all of my plumbing as opposed, well, not me personally, but I could hire someone to dig this extensive plumbing network without having to jackhammer and disturb foundations and then potentially, mess up the exterior of the building. And it was kind of the right fit for us, but it did take a lot of searching to realize, wow, this project is bigger than we thought. With Beer Barrio, we were going into a space that was already a restaurant. So it was just kind of putting new equipment and, changing some things cosmetically and giving it a new look and feel, but not really a lot of extensive architectural work. So that was kind of what we decided to look for, was that open slab, new construction, so that we could just lay from day one the custom plumbing that we needed. And our needs were a little more specific this time, so we had to really find just the right fit.
Let's take next question from table 20, Bassam.
Good morning. My name is Bassam Safi. I'm with Our Town America. We're the country's premier new mover program in the area, and I've owned and managed my franchises here, Raleigh, Durham, Cary, for the past 10 to 11 years. And prior to that, I ran restaurants, especially pizza, in between here and Myrtle Beach for about 17 years, and I'm glad I don't do that anymore. You guys remind me of nightmares here. So my question to you is that I really, truly enjoyed being engaged, in the community when I ran my restaurants, and doing the things that, like Amber mentioned earlier, giving back or engaging people emotionally to gain that loyalty. Because I know what I could do in service to retain them. So there are some things that you do in retention in marketing. And that's my question is about marketing. Some things you do to retain the guests or customers as they come in your doors. Social media is one of them. Tons of different tools available these days to keep your customers coming back. What are you doing in the area of acquisition in marketing that will bring you new? That's the most challenging part to business owners, to bringing new people in the door every single month. So what are you doing in that area to get people in the door that are more likely to become loyal to your business?
I'll take that one. It's funny because when I first started, I took over from Ian downtown. I made my marketing budget zero, with the exception of the yellow pages, because I just knew that we were just doing such great product, and we had the business. We just needed to change some things within the business to make it operationally better. Now, when we moved to military cutoff, I needed people to know that we were out there. So we did more marketing and advertising. We do more now with billboards. But as far as like something that we do internally, our loyalty system that we run through our POS system is amazing. We have, I think, over 6,000 people within the system. It's a loyalty card that they get, just like your Vic card or whatever. But that for us has worked really well.
So acquiring new guests, it's keeping yourself top of mind. We have about 9% new customers, so constantly looking at our digital advertising with our social media. Again, going back to that conversation with our guests, we believe that you get a lot of your first-time guests through recommendations, word of mouth. So you have to give an incredible experience to one guest, and they're going to go and say, like, you've got to come and check out this new restaurant. Why don't we go here for drinks? So really delivering on that guest experience is how you're going to, get acquisitions. But then they hear it from their neighbor, then they see it on a Facebook post, then they get a little like cookie that follows them around as they're shopping on Google, and so you see it multiple times.
It's definitely a combination of effort now. Again, 15 years ago, there was no Facebook, no Instagram, any of those type of things, and it's something that we really have to be conscious of now. When I started out in the business, the only thing I really had to worry about was a newspaper, magazine, or maybe a news article. Make it or break it right there. Now, every one of you guys is a potential critic that comes into the restaurant. And I think that's for everyone that's up here. And so it's very important that we put our best foot forward. And I can't tell you how many folks say, such and such recommended this place, or the concierge recommended this place. And so that's a really good thing to know that we're doing that right. But it's got to be a whole team effort, not just great food, it's got to be great service. And I can tell you, we have folks that come to the restaurant that I could give a W-2 at the end of the year. They come in so often,
Yeah.
So yeah. But with that says a whole lot of how they feel about us, and knowing that customer's name, knowing what they like, having what they want all the time, those kind of things. We don't particularly have a loyalty program, but there are nights when that dinner is on the house. Those type of things, that's what we do. And so we're at a level where there's a ton of expectation. I often equate Catch to being like Disney World. People plan on coming there. They have an expectation when they come there. And so everything has to be working. No one wants to see drunk Mickey Mouse, everybody, and it's very much, when you go out, it's very much a show, what we do. We put on a very good show, I hope. Before that curtain rises, we're busy polishing this and going over the specials, making sure what distinguishes our cuisine and our service from going to Longhorn, per se, or going to another business. So making sure that we get everything together so when that curtain rises, we are right on point to solidify a great dining experience that you will want to come back and see us time and time again,
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm not a tech person when it comes to advertising, things like that. I think it's more the guest experience, that trolley guy that, drives everybody by and that just says, oh man, if you ever go to this place, you can get a burger or get a Reuben or, something like that. I think that word of mouth, to me, it's twofold because it makes me feel a lot better. If somebody just saw an ad somewhere, they might stop in, but if somebody personally recommends us, I take great pride in that because, that's not just somebody that you're paying to say, hey, this is a great restaurant. They're speaking from their heart. As far as the tech stuff, there's so many different options out there. I remember somebody brought something to me and it would text you if you were near the restaurant. And I was like, that's invasive. There's some things where I just draw the line.
Yeah.
If I'm walking down the street, I don't want a text from Forky Cork and says, hey, you hungry? You want a burger? I'm like, I probably wouldn't come. I probably personally wouldn't go there. For me, that's invasive. I'm like, when I'm hungry, I'll let you know. Like, it's okay. So some of those options to me, different opinions will vary. Some people are really into that kind of stuff. And
Now actually, it's your Apple Watch will say, hey, we noticed you're hungry.
right.
There's a fork and cork.
Your calorie intake is low for today. I think that's a bit much. I like the personal level a little bit more.
One thing I want to say, I say this to my employees all the time, is that our business is very different than any other business. When a customer walks in and sits down at a table to eat, I say 99% of the time they're going to buy something. They're going to eat something. They're not going to look at very rarely will they look at the menu and walk out. They've already made the commitment when they walked in the door. So I say to my staff, we have to engage them with good food, number one, and good service, and the place has to be clean and organized. If you can do those three things and do them well, I'll make money and you'll make money because your tip's going to be better, or I can hand out better raises and that kind of thing. So the most important thing is that when that customer sits down and orders and has a good experience, is when they're hitting the door on the way out, that they want to come back. That's if you've done that, you are going to. I mean,
The rest
you're
falls
gonna-
into place.
Exactly, the rest falls into place. So
I've joked with some of my employees because you see a lot of restaurants that, like especially chain restaurants, where the menu has all the pictures. Like I'll use Cheesecake Factory, for example. Like everybody loves Cheesecake Factory, I guess. For me, you walk in and the menu's like 3 inches thick. You're like, Chinese food, African food. You're just like, I just want cheesecake, and
Right.
so, but you see these pictures on there and the menu is written to be very enticing. And I always tell my employees, like, our menu has to sound good and somebody wants to order it. And then when the food comes, it has to look better than it sounded. And then when they take that bite, it's got to taste better than it looked. You can write a menu and if it sounds delicious and then something comes out and it just looks like,
That first
something out of
bite
a
is
bag.
always telling. If they take the bite and they start
Yeah.
doing this, and
Like they're
yeah.
already let
You
down.
can tell
So,
immediately.
once you fall in the restaurant business, it's like you just kind of trip. Unless they leave happy, like Ray said, that's where you lose the battle. So.
Next question's table 21, Andrew Gray.
Thank you. Thank you. So, there we go. So I'm sure everyone in this room does not get tipped at work unless you're in the restaurant industry. What do you guys think about the disconnect that tipping does between what your job is as a restaurant owner and the consumer? And do you see a future for restaurant businesses without tipping?
I hope that I am finished with the restaurant industry before tips go away, if I'm just being honest, because for many years of my life, I was a tipped employee. Even as a manager, a lot of restaurants will have you as kind of like a shift manager, but you're still earning tips on top of a salary that they compensate you for some small managerial tasks. And I always preferred that. I preferred to also make my own tips. I think it's so ingrained in our culture, and unfortunately, the restaurants, especially in New York City, when I was still there, Danny Meyer's restaurants, and they experimented it with the Momofuku group, David Chang's restaurant group, with eliminating tipping. And then they had to pull back on that and say, we thought this was going to be a good idea, but no one wanted to work in those restaurants because they're like, now I make less money. And the line cooks were paid better, which goes into the shortage of kitchen labor. A line cook making $11 an hour can't survive in New York City, whereas his front of house counterpart makes $400 a night. So it's this whole web of problems. And I'm not saying that I think our current way is the best way, but it's the way that the system and the prices that you all are accustomed to pay is part of that. I mean, it's so interconnected that to just take, tipping out of the puzzle would throw off 10 other facets of the industry.
It'd
And
be
I
a
just don't want to,
horrible
I don't want to be in
transition.
charge of dealing with that. I hope it's 20, 30, 40 years out before we all change our minds, but that's just my perspective.
The business is very hard. I know if I wanted to be rich, I probably would have played football. Okay, but it's a business, and none of my servers get paid minimum wage at all. We pay them way more than that. It's important that people can make a living, especially in our particular business. Not everyone understands. They want to dine out, but they don't understand the whole dining experience. And I think that's something that folks kind of need to be educated on, because there are still a lot of servers that are out here making $2 and something per hour. And, you say customer service, they're there, they're putting on their show, they're smiling, they've got your glasses filled with water, they're replacing your silverware, and then you get up and leave 5% or 10%. and they've got a family at home, a daughter at home, bills to pay, and it's just kind of like something you take off the chin. I think that it's something that folks should understand, the whole idea of tipping and how that all came about. You do some reading on that and what the whole idea of tipping and what that was and who that was really for. And it may change your whole outlook when you go out and dine. I'm always a 20% tipper wherever I go. At the minimum, I always do that. I mean, if you can't do that, shouldn't go out to eat. I mean, that's what it is here. That's what it is here. I mean, tell me, and you think about it, if you were making $2.50 an hour working somewhere and you're dependent on someone to be generous, you're giving them a level of customer service, and you walk with $50. You've worked 8 hours, and you still got to pay taxes and all these different things. It's not a lot. So in my business, we really give. I give more than I take. And not only giving as far as making sure our employees make good wages, but we also give in the community as well. When we were talking about retaining or gaining new employees, customers, that's great, and I think that if you do a good job, you'll get that. But we also have to give to the community as well. And that's something that we really, this afternoon, Catch the Food Truck will be over at the Good Shepherd feeding this evening. And so these are the things that we have to do, for all of you guys that give to all of us up here. It is our duty to continue to give to the community to make sure that the folks that are less fortunate have something as well. A terrible series of events for us, I could be standing in a line wanting food or needing something as well. And not just food, something good, And so we take pride in going out and feeding folks who are just down on their luck for a moment, And so that is very important, to be able to give those conscious good vibes out and to get those back as well. So it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, not just on the back end with us making sure that our employees are making good wages, but making sure that, our community is taken care of as well.
And so often the restaurants are the ones who are out there feeding. So, we had the five-alarm fire in Raleigh. We were out feeding and giving water to the firemen that night. There was a massive fire that destroyed a city in Tennessee. We became the hub. We called all of our vendors. We brought in beer trucks, and it became the hub where the community could bring the needs. And our general manager actually drove the truck up to, I think it was like Gettysburg or Gatlinburg, and she would drive the truck with all the supplies up to the city. The riots, we were feeding the riot police in Charlotte when the riots were going on a couple years ago. So the restaurant industry feeds and nourishes the community, not only the people who work for us, but also, the community at large.
Rick?
Yeah, I think, tipping incentivizes good service and friendly service, My experience, first time over in Europe, we went out to eat at the hotel restaurant, and the service just wasn't that great. It was curt. It was, the guy just didn't really care. We felt like we weren't. So I tipped him really well. We happened to the next night come in there and got the same waiter. Man, he was all over our table. Like I thought he was going to sign my shoes. So I think it incentivizes good service and and them to be friendly with you.
Yeah, I think it helps internally in a restaurant. I think all of us have worked front of the house at some point, and you always had your superstars, and you had your, I'm just here because my mom wanted me to get a job, and I got to do this, and there's certain people that they make a great living at it, and I think they do get rewarded through the tipping system, and as Haley said, canceling it would just be a very difficult transition because in the restaurant industry you have certain percentages for labor, for cost, for static costs, your rent, everything like that. If you have to increase your labor by X, where does that come from? Do you buy cheaper food? If you want to put out the same product, then your menu prices have to change. And, you know, as guests, you might be like, oh, now I don't have to tip, but wait, my pizza's now $32, you know, or $45 or whatever. You know, it's like, and then, you know, you don't see the correlation right off the bat. You know, so then now we're the bad guys raising prices. So it's kind of tough. I think it would be a hard transition.
Well, let's talk about Keith mentioned the food trucks. Let's talk about food trucks for a few minutes. So James had one of the first ones in the area, and then Keith has one now. Take us through how that's similar, different from having a restaurant, and do you see the food truck business continuing to grow, or is it more of a phase, you think?
People ask me all the time if I miss the paddy wagon, and I have to say, you know, I have fond memories. Would I ever do it again? Probably not. It was an excellent gateway for me, you know, just to get my name out there and get my product out there, and then, you know, sort of make that evolution. It is very different. You have a lot of back-end work, you know, where at a restaurant you can open, and you can be open for lunch, and you've got guys in the back prepping and doing this and that and the other. You know, for a food truck, you do all that work before you go somewhere. And then you're subject to weather. You're subject to, you know, my beast of a truck would break down. You know, the starter wouldn't start. So I go out to, you know, serve late night downtown, and, you know, at 10 o'clock, you know, all I hear is tick, 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 tick. So, you know, I don't know a mechanic that's going to come out and work on a 10,000-pound Grumman truck at 10:30 at night. So, you know, you're down for the count on that one. So I think it's different. You know, I think there are some benefits. You know, the startup cost is low. You know, your overhead can be a little bit lower, you know, depending on your health department rules and whether or not you have to have a secondary commissary and all those kind of things involved with it. I think it is sort of a fad. I think it started, you know, with the Great American Food Truck Race or whatever. You know, everybody got excited and they were like, well, I make great, you know, chili. I'm going to put a chili truck out there. You know, because you can do one little thing, and you have to do one little thing and do it really well. You know, do hot dogs. I mean, was the lobster roll guy? He's killing it. He does one thing. He does a lobster roll. And that's it. And then he's got a line a mile long. You know, we did a lot of events. We did concerts and things like that, and those helped financially. But, you know, we're not in an area like D.C. or New York where people live vertically, and you can park a truck on a corner, and you've got, you know, 5,000 people right at your door. You know, people have to go and find you, and they'll walk past 6 restaurants to go look for a food truck, and then they see the line, and they're like, forget it, I'm going to walk in here and grab something to eat. So.
I think that the TV made the catering truck the food truck. And we were so used to watching TV and seeing these trucks parked here and there, and like, okay, it's a lot more work than that. Like James was saying, we hardly do any events in the summer during the day because it's too hot. It's too hot. It's no way I would put my employees in a situation where it's 100+ degrees on a truck cooking for lunch. The expense in running that truck and stocking that truck, a lot of folks I get food truck requests every day. I have a party for 10 folks. Can you bring the food truck out? You know.
But all 10 are going to eat. It's going to be great.
Lunch, right?
Yeah, you know. And so there are a lot of variables when it comes to that, you know. One of the big things for us in our approach with opening up food truck, we've had as many as 3, and we're down to 1 now, was our restaurant was a little bit on the higher end. And so we knew that we would have customers that were interested, but might not make it through the door of the brick and mortar. So we wanted to be able to take our same food that we serve with integrity, the same local deal, and bring it to the customer at a whole different price point. And so that's where our idea of opening up a food truck kind of really surfaced. And so I think it was a lot of learning in the beginning of scrambling around, coming here, requests for this, requests for that, and we've really kind of consolidated, and we spend a lot of time at Flytrap Brewery downtown. You know, Mike and Emily are great folks, and we were kind of concentrated there. On the outside of that, we do tons of weddings, pharmaceutical events, and private parties and things like that. So the notion to just pull up on the corner or in the parking lot is not real. In the winter, it's the same variable as it is if it's cold outside. Like James said, no one wants to go stand out in the cold and wait. So the brick and mortar, or when I say the restaurant space, has a real strong draw. I will never forget, as you were talking about starting it, I never forget one day we were coming back from a movie event. They were filming some movie up in Wallace. We came back, they restocked, we pulled off. I got right up in Ogden, my food truck engine locked up right there, heart of the summer. I had to call the rep from HBO and tell them that we would not make it because the food truck locked up. It was their launch party. And I was so disappointed. And she was, can you make it? Can you make it? Not only were we going to do that one, we had to go to Satellite the same evening. I didn't make the HBO party, but we packed up everything and went on the Satellite and just set up a tent. It's those kind of variables. And so dealing with a mobile kind of concept, it's, it has its days. And I come out there and start the truck and she don't want to start.
Like one thing can be a deal breaker.
Yeah, and the customer or the client's not really trying to hear that. And so, it was really great. It was great getting the name out there. We could travel to Raleigh, Charlotte. I've been to Atlanta working on movies. And the movies were really great for us. When they were filming here, that was the ultimate. So like I said, at that time, we were running 3 different food trucks. Yeah, it was great. It was great. And so when that industry kind of faded away, then we scaled it back, and it's still super successful. People love it, all of that kind of thing. But it's a lot different than it was. And we were at the food truck rodeo that they have here locally, and it's always a blast when we go out there. I just wish the lines could be a lot shorter. We got some diehard customers that'll stand out there. Yep.
So my other question about possible oversaturation is how many breweries can Wilmington get? And I'll direct it to Haley, who's
Just one.
Yeah. That is a question my entire career that's been asked. Oh, are we getting too many? Is the bubble going to burst? But I think what we actually need to do, similar to how we're eating here in Wilmington, is to eat and drink locally. I'm opening with a system that's 5 barrels, pardon me, that will really just provide my restaurant with beer. I'm not going to distribute to anyone else. We don't have the production capacity for that. I just want you to come in and have our meat that we smoke in-house on, really great rolls with great sides that we're making, and then also pair it with a beer, because that's why I do keep the title beer sommeliers. My specialty really is pairing the beer and food together. It isn't just about enjoying beer or drinking. It's about, wow, this experience was taken to a higher level because it was thoughtfully paired for me. So I think a concept like ours is really sustainable, where it's somewhere you have to go and drink on site to have it. I think that's a big draw. And Mad Mole, another small brewery, they're opening, and they've just opened actually, just a tap room. They're not selling to anyone, and they don't even have food, but they're like, I think our beers and what we're doing is special enough that people in this area will come and seek us out. So I think the smaller production, I think there'll be another Boston Beer Company, Sam Adams or Sierra Nevada in our lifetime? Probably not. I think a lot of those big guys are starting to fall because they expanded and saturated the entire country with their product to a point that you go, well, I'd actually rather go check out this new local place and don't think I'm going to get the grocery store 6-pack tonight. I think that's what we'll see changing, but I think Wilmington loves a night out at a brewery, and it's not pretentious, it's family friendly, and it's a casual, fun vibe that you're like, I can meet my friends here after work, I can bring my family, I can come here after a sports outing and not be embarrassed about what I'm wearing. I think it really, or straight from the beach in flip-flops, I think the breweries really fit with what people who live in Wilmington and also our visitors and tourists, what they're looking for when they come. So I hope that there is room for one more. And I know there are a few more in the works beyond that, but I think our market, none of our breweries have closed. So I think it's kind of an indication that we could, use a couple more.
We've got time for one more audience question. Table 34, Cameron. It'll come on. You got,
Cameron Galliard.
Yep.
District Manager with Waffle House. My question is to you guys is, I'm part of that chain series of restaurants, and we're constantly battling different ways to enhance our customers' experience. So when I speak to my unit managers and I speak to my staff, I let them know that people don't come in for the food. They can go anywhere. They can go to one of these 1,000 places in Wilmington for different food options. We're creating an experience, like with Chick-fil-A. Chick-fil-A says it's my pleasure. There's certain restaurants that have certain card indicators for if they're new or if they've been here, or what kind of menu items they might want to try if it's their first time. My question is to you guys, do you have any specific ways inside of your restaurants that you build a relationship with your customers to keep them coming back?
thank you.
Well, I'll kick it off because when I hear the word chain, it's like, ooh, it stings. Because we have two divisions. We've got the Signature Brand division, which has, eclectic mix of different restaurants, and then we've got our Carolina Ale House brand. I first want to start off by saying chains aren't dead, just bad chains are dead.
Are dying,
They're
yeah.
dying. The chains that didn't reinvent themselves, that were too focused on cutting costs, cutting quality, and not keeping up with the consumer and what our guests want, those are the ones that are dying. But you look at Starbucks. Starbucks is a monstrous chain, and I mean, how many people have the mobile app, on their phone and go every day? Same thing as you mentioned, Chick-fil-A. So one of the things that we try is, again, to make each restaurant have its unique personality. So yes, it's a Carolina Ale House, but the Carolina Ale House in Wilmington operates very differently, and it has its own little personality compared to, say, Tennessee. And in addition to that, we challenge our team members to, again, go one step above and beyond what the guest was expecting. And our managers, we tell them, learn somebody's name, shake their hands, and then, buy them a drink, grab them a dessert, taste them around our draft beer system. And we've got, 72 draft beers, and a lot of them are actually local. We changed up our program so that we could be local. So getting your team members to buy in to that and creating those genuine connections with your guests and your team members, because your team members at the end of the day are the ones who are taking care of the guests.
I'd say that it's about guest experience. The chain is not a bad word. No restaurant started as a chain. It's not like you automatically went, and we have 400 locations, and everything comes in a bag. I worked at Chili's when I was in college, and Chili's in Texas was awesome. Like, it was good food, good burgers, good fajitas, coldest beer around because they had it in big ice buckets. And then I saw Chili's change, menu rollouts, different things. It started with, I always use soup in a bag as a term. Like, once you start soup in a bag, it's over. And because restaurants do it in the interest of consistency. They say, well, we've got 25 locations now, and Steve makes chicken corn chowder a little bit different than, Toby over here. So they were like, we're going to start making it all together, and then we'll just ship it out. And then next thing you know, you've got, chicken in a bag, and, Chef Mike is in charge. Chef Mike. I don't have a microwave at any of my restaurants. People crack up because they're just like, just throw it in the microwave. And I'm like, we don't have one. And I had a lady yell at me one day. She was like, what do you mean you don't have a microwave? And I'm like, we just actually cook it. It's weird. But I think keeping it personally and your staff making that guest experience, no matter it's a chain or not, is what people go back for. You know, the food can be great, and it needs to be great, but, you know, if you've got an awesome bartender, you know, I bartended forever, and I'll remember face and drink.
Drink order.
I'll forget names like nobody's business. Like, but I'll remember, you know, something weird about where you work or whatever. But you'll walk in the door and, you know, here's your Myers and Diet Coke with a lime because that's what I know what you drink or whatever. You know, and people love that little touch. So
That's what I was going to say is actually staff retention. Because if you naturally over time, people do, for the most part, they do kind of get better and better at that job. And they don't have to think while they're pouring 3 beers at once. They're like, got you, yeah, no problem, go ahead, I'm listening. And they can just do it all because they're so accustomed to your system. And I think the best way for that is if we have a crazy busy weekend, even if it's a tipped employee who got crazy busy money, we still give bonuses. I love bonuses and incentives. And my cooks, if I have a monster Saturday that I'm looking at my bank account, like, wow, the restaurant did great, I don't keep that. You know, I let my staff know, we hit this number, guys, that was our goal, and you get a piece of that. And they're like, yes. You know, they feel so proud. Like, when we have those busy days, I get something for it. I know that's a little harder with a chain restaurant to take money out of the cash register because that'd be your job too. But, you know, making people feel, it could just be a compliment. Just saying, we were so busy and you stayed out of the weeds, you were never behind, you did awesome. People just, they take it to heart and they're like, okay, great. Like, I had a good day because you said that. So I think just really taking those moments to individually recognize your staff or at a staff meeting in front of others, say, did you guys know that Billy like broke this record for this and that? Like, you know, he did a really good job. And then they feel better and they want to come to work the next day and the next day. And your guests receive that side of them to where it's all like a cycle. Because it is the guest experience, but it does start with the team as well.
So usually our last question of the day is always we go down the panel and say, what's one big takeaway? But given the topic today, I'm going to challenge our panel with, if we could order one item from one of your restaurants, and what would you recommend we come in for? But you got to stick with one. And by the way, I didn't warn them about this question because I just thought.
the look on our faces.
I know everybody's expecting me to say pizza, but no, actually not. When I worked there, the thing that I consistently had all the time was the chicken quesadilla. If you haven't had one at my place, come in and try it. The chicken quesadilla, also our nachos. I mean, nachos are enough for like 4 people. And for some reason, they cook really well in the pizza oven. They make the nachos really crispy and everything. So
I'm going to have to go with Ray's favorite at Fork and Cork, the Reuben.
Yep.
Reuben was one of the things for me that if you had a good Reuben, I mean, I might not eat a Reuben once a week, but if I think Reuben, I'm going to go to your restaurant. And so we make our own corned beef. It takes 2 weeks. It's a process. It's not just, you know, buy it in a bag and throw it on a slicer and heat it on the grill. I mean, it's definitely a thing. We get our bread from a place in Raleigh, Neomond, and Reuben and onion rings. That's what I would say.
I'll just say on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, we have half-off appetizers. biggest deal ever now. I mean, it's huge. And so with that given and said, our local oysters on the half shell are on that. And I would highly recommend those. That's what I would get if, you know, fresh Cedar Island oysters, nothing like it. Nothing like it.
So the one dish I'm addicted to right now is actually in our Carolina Ale House portfolio. It is chorizo meatloaf, but they hand roast the green chilies, peel them. We make the meatloaf from scratch, and it is just, you know, stick to your ribs, comfort food. But my second is a shortbread, deep fried shortbread. It's rolled in vanilla wafers, and it's like our version of strawberry shortcake, but it's indulgent.
I was saying short ribs as you said that.
No,
I was like, she's taking me on a turn.
Shortcake, wrong turn,
Yeah,
wrong turn, shortcake. Strawberry shortcake, not short ribs, sorry. Vidrio has short ribs, different concepts. Strawberry shortcake.
I would say, just back to that first memory, the guacamole and margaritas is just so what we're about. And it really was that deciding moment that our concept was defined. And I'll tell you, as soon as Skytown opens at the end of the month, we're going to be brewing a beer specifically for Beer Barrio. So there will be one, beer that you can get in the community at our sister restaurant. That's going to be this lager that we call Pinchelada, and it is a nice hoppy lager with lime juice, a little bit of jalapeno, and a little salt as well. So it's kind of like your beer alternative to a margarita, and that'll be something you can't get anywhere else. So we're really excited to kind of have our own house beer for Barrio and to pair that with our guacamole, which I think is the best in town. I'm really looking forward to that.
Guess we should have made this an evening event, so we could have gone into after hours, right? So, if we could please have a round of applause for our panel. We always give our panelists a gift of a reading assignment, and we thought a new book called Measure What Matters by the venture capitalist John Doerr was appropriate. It really talks about how to scale businesses, so hopefully that'll help all their businesses grow. Thank you again for coming. Please remember your parking pass is attached to the treat at your table, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event.